Layers are one of the most important features of Photoshop, but sometimes when we have a lot of layers, navigating through them can be a little bit difficult. Thankfully, Photoshop just released a feature that makes working with layers easier than ever. Hey there and welcome to Phlearn. My name is Aaron Nace and today we're showing you a feature that is in the beta version of Photoshop. So if you haven't already done so, be sure to install it. You can do that through your Creative Cloud installer. Let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop and show you how to use it. So here we have two images. Now I want to take this logo and put it behind this subject's head. We're going to start with our Move tool. Let's hit V for the Move tool. We're going to click and drag from one document over to the other. I'm going to click on F for full screen. And I've got things set up in the standard, in the default orientation, how this is going to come in the beta. Okay, up here with our settings, auto select is turned on. We have our settings here, and you can see all of these settings are now checked. Show transform controls, and then we have some new ones. Show layer bounds on hover, expand layer group on click, and show hover bounds from layers. Okay, let's go ahead and show you how this works. So if I hover over layer 1, there we go, layer 0 rather, you're going to see it actually hovers blue here in my document. So let's go ahead and click there, and you can see that selects this layer. If I hover over this layer, for the first time ever, the layer in my layers panel is highlighting in blue, and over here, you're going to see it in just a second, it's going to highlight blue as well. So as I click through these different layers, each of them gets highlighted. Okay, now we want to just make this a little bit more complicated, because that's kind of where the whole fun of this workflow comes in, is when we start to have a more complicated document. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to first click on this layer, and I want to create a layer mask to cut this out of its background. So let's go right here where it says remove background in my contextual taskbar. Let's go ahead and click there, and you can see, yes, in fact, we have removed the background. And I'm going to click and just drag this right behind. We'll just put it right up here for now. In a second, I'll put that behind our subject. Okay. And then right down here, we're going to use generative fill. I'm going to make a selection right here on this board. Let's click on generative fill, and I'm just going to type in sticker and hit on generate. I want to create a few more layers so we can really show off the features of these brand new tools. So here's our sticker. There we go. That one looks pretty good. And we'll just click and drag right there. Click on generative fill and type in sticker again and hit enter. That one looks pretty good. It doesn't really say much, but that's totally fine for this video. So here we have our logo, we have our background, and a couple different stickers. Let's go to our layer panel. So as of now, as I click and drag over each one of these layers, you're not going to see anything now. The reason is because I'm set to my marquee tool. So if I need to actually see what I'm doing, we want to make sure we select the move tool. So V for the move tool. Now, as I hover over each one of these different documents, I have, for the first time, these blue little highlights over top of my documents. Okay, now we're seeing a lot of stuff, because if I click on this, there we go, it's going to select that layer. And I also have my transform controls. If I click on this one, we're going to see that layer in the transform controls. Click on this layer, we're also going to see my transform controls. So I want to just change a couple of settings. We're going to just turn some things off and change some preferences to how I think I might actually use this tool. Okay, starting with our preferences. Let's go into Photoshop Beta's preferences. We're going to go into our settings, and we're going to go right to where it says guides, grids, and slices. Fantastic. Now here we have this brand new feature called hover layer bounds. This is where we have our line color and our panel color. Okay, the line color is going to be inside of our document. The panel color is in the layers panel. Now, we already have a lot of light blue features for artboards and grids and slices and paths. All of that stuff is light blue. So I want to change this to a color that Photoshop doesn't use by default. We're just going to go to green. So the line color is going to be green. Our panel color is going to be green. And then right over here for the thickness, I'm going to take that and bring that to 3 pixels. Okay, so green, green, and 3 pixels. Let's hit OK. Now we can start to see this a little bit better. So if I hover over the sticker number 1, we can see that my panel view now has a green highlight, and also right over here in my document, it has a green highlight. And as I go through my document, each of these has a green highlight over top of them. So let's go ahead to our settings now. we're going to turn everything off except for the very bottom setting. I just want to go through these one by one so we can really get a good understanding of what's going on here. So show hover bounds from layers. Now, let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit and see how this works. So right now, as I move around my actual document, nothing is being highlighted, okay? So show hover bounds from layers, this bottom one, this is going to happen here on the right-hand side, okay? This is all of these layers are now being highlighted as I go through them in my layer panel, which is fantastic. I absolutely love this feature. Now, the other thing that I'm seeing here is I hover this over layer one. Let's just double click and call this logo. And as I hover over the logo, we're going to actually see two different lines. The first one that's smaller is completely opaque, and this is what's visible on the layer. And the larger one actually includes the layer mask. So we're able to see both the layer and the layer mask, which is incredibly helpful. Okay, now here we can see these settings exist right here from my layer panel, but what happens if I want them to actually appear as I hover over top of my image? Well, that's where we're going to go to our settings. Again, make sure you're in your move tool. We're going to go to our settings and we're going to go to show layer bounds on hover. We can have that checked. And now if I hover over my actual document, we can see the layer bounds. Fantastic. And it's going to correspond and hover over here because we have hover bounds from layers also selected. So we have both of these things selected. Now let's go ahead and start to put these in groups. So we're going to take both of these stickers, shift click both of those layers and hit Control or Command G. I'm just going to go double click and call that stickers. Okay. We're going to take this logo and I'm going to group that with itself and call this logo. Now we've got one more cool feature that I want to show you. With this logo, let's go ahead and take this and put that right behind our subject's head. We're going to go ahead and click on our background layer. Now let's go to select subject. So I've selected my subject from my background layer. Then I have my logo layer, and then I have the group that is holding my logo layer. If I go ahead and create a layer mask now on the group, then it's going to hide everything that's inside of the group. Basically, it's going to put the logo behind my subject, which is exactly what I want. So let's go ahead and make sure we're selected on the group. Yep, we definitely are. I still have my selection active, and we're going to click on our layer mask icon. There we go. And then here, I'll just click ... invert mask. So it actually looks like what we want. Fantastic. So now we're starting to see, yep, we're getting a little bit more complex as our document moves on. Just move this right over here. Fantastic. And as I highlight over everything, we're starting to see, I'm going to highlight over top of my stickers and it's going to show me everything from the entire sticker group. So I come over here. Let's just move this over here. We can now see I've got a bounding box over everything that's inside of that group. Now we're going to move to our next option here. Go to our settings up at the very top. Expand layer group on clips. So let's go ahead and click there. Now, if I hover over one of these stickers, we can see it's inside of the sticker group. But if I click there, it's going to automatically open that sticker group and show me exactly where that is. Okay. If I hover over the other one, you can see it's now highlighted in my layer panel. There we go. Looking really good. Let's do the same thing with our logo up at the very top. So if I click here, boop, you can see it automatically opened up the group for my logo, and now we can see the logo group. Now, let's check this out. As I zoom out a little bit, we're going to see, there we go. I like this light green. I definitely prefer it to the blue that comes by default. If I hover over this logo group, as we can see here, what I'm seeing is a opaque green highlight over top of the layer that's inside of it. And I can see a light highlight over top of the layer mask that is basically my subject. So whether you're working with a layer or a group, you're going to be able to see the contents of the layer and the layer mask with this new feature. So now I'm going to show you how I'm planning to use this brand new feature in Photoshop and the options that I'm going to go ahead and choose. I've already showed you the option for highlighting everything in green. I think this works really nicely. The other options that I prefer in Photoshop, right here where it says auto select, you can choose layer or group. I actually prefer to keep this unchecked. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. Auto select works like this. If I hover over and click here on this layer, it allows me to move it around. That's nice. But let's say I click over here. Now I'm going to be moving my background layer. If I go ahead and turn auto select layer off, well, as long as I'm selected on my layer, here in my layers panel, I can click here and move it around, but I can also click anywhere else in my document and move it around. I don't actually have to grab that icon. So it allows me to make sure that I'm only working on that layer. Even if I go here and click on one of these stickers, I'm not going to move the sticker around. I'm just going to be moving around the logo because that's what I'm on. Now, if you hold Control or Command, it temporarily activates auto select. So if I wanted to move my subject, I can hold Control or Command and then click and drag to move my subject. There we go. Let's hit undo. But by default, as long as I'm selected on this layer, it's only going to allow me to affect that layer. So my personal preference is to turn off auto select and then hold Control or Command to activate it when I'd like. Now, the other feature that I recommend over here in your settings, by default, show transform controls is checked. And basically, this is going to allow you to transform your document. So if I want to click and drag to transform this, I can. However, for my personal preference, I think especially with hover layer bounds, it's starting to get like kind of messy. I'm seeing a lot on the screen. So for my personal preference, I'm going to go to my settings. I'm going to turn off show transform controls. So I don't see them. I'm still seeing my hover layer bounds. Now, if I want to select a layer, let's go ahead and say I'm selected on my background layer. So I have my background layer selected in my layers panel. That means if I move my background layer, it's selected. Now let's say I want to go ahead and select on my logo. I can hold Control or Command and click on this. And now I've selected that logo. And if I want to transform it, I'm going to hold Control or Command T. Control or Command T, this allows me to actually transform it, but I'm not seeing my layer bounds there all of the time. So again, we can do the same thing right down here. I can hold Control or Command and click on one of these stickers, or I can hit Control or Command T and try to scale that if I want to. There we go. Let's just hit undo. But I'm not going to have auto select layer turned on by default, nor will I have show transform controls turned on by default, because I prefer to keep it just a little bit cleaner. And you know what? Now that I'm speaking through, I don't know that I want everything to be highlighted in my actual document. So let's go ahead into my settings. We're going to go to show layer bounds on hover. I'm just going to turn that off because I like working with my document in a little bit of a clean workflow here. But honestly, I do think I will use this. If I hover over each of these layers, I do think I would like to see where they are actually in my document. So I think this is going to be my default setting. Again, these top two, I'm going to turn these on. Expand layer group on click, I like. Show hover bounds from layers, I like. And turning off auto select layers. This allows me to see exactly where I'm working in my layer panel and how it corresponds to my image itself. So what do you guys think about these brand new features in Photoshop? Again, right now they are in the beta, so be sure to install the beta and test them out. Let us know in a comment right down below if you plan on using these features and how you might use them. What features are you going to turn off and on, and what workflow options work best for you? Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give us a big thumbs up, and I will send you more free Photoshop videos in the future. Thanks again. I'll Phlearn you later. Bye, everyone.